Hello, and welcome everybody to NOCD's Rumination Reset Workshop. I am excited to be here today. I'm excited for all of the people who could attend live and all of the people who couldn't attend live that are going to be able to watch the video. So very excited. I wanted to mention that, of course, because we are recording this, that it will be available. If you're registered, you will get a link to the video, or you can also always go over to our YouTube channel and check out this and other fabulous webinars. So let me just introduce myself. My name is Tracie Ibrahim. And I am a therapist at NOCD that specializes in OCD and anxiety and related disorders, which I have been treating for 20 plus years now. So I'm obviously approximately 21 years old. Just kidding. And I am also the Chief Compliance Officer of NOCD. And yeah, so very excited to have everyone here today. We're obviously going to be talking about rumination and different ways that rumination can show up for people with OCD and what to do about it and all of those good things. So I am so excited to talk about this today. It is a topic that comes up at least multiple times every day, whether it's in a session or in one of our NOCD support groups. We do have an entire support group program with right around 30 support groups that happen throughout the week. They are free to anybody who is a member at NOCD. So, all right, let's get this started. So, I would like to talk a little bit about how rumination shows up in people with OCD. I think sometimes it can get a little bit confusing. Am I ruminating? Am I thinking? What's happening? So, rumination really, if you were to boil it down, we're talking about overthinking, or just really running yourself down thinking about something, whether it's trying to solve uh, for uncertainty that you have, or whether it's trying to remember exactly how something happened, or it could be, oh gosh, what's going to happen in the future, which usually sounds a lot like what if dot dot dot. A lot of rumination starts with that, oh, but what if I don't do this thing and something bad happens, or what if I do this thing and something bad happens, or so lots of what ifs. I'm very suspect of things that start with what if that come up. um, as some people might know, I have OCD myself. So, as somebody with lived experience of well over 40 years with OCD, I'm very familiar with compulsions, including rumination. Um, my own OCD was treated with ERP, and I no longer take part in compulsions on purpose anyway. We all fall into them sometimes just because they can happen. But rumination, for people with OCD is basically overthinking. So all of the different ways that I explained, um, and a lot of times people will say, I wasn't trying to ruminate. I just found myself ruminating. Like maybe it's just automatic, like an involuntary reaction where next thing you know, you're ruminating. And that absolutely is valid. Even me, I've been treated for 20 plus years now. And, rumination, we don't get a warning. We don't get some sort of like light flashing, like, warning, you're about to fall into rumination, do something else. That would be wonderful, because then we could just avoid it. But it tends to be that it is sort of automatic or involuntary. So even, I'll give you a good example. It happened to me the other day. I was sitting in my room on a chair and the TV was on. And next thing I knew, I was staring off into space, into like just looking at like the corner of my room, not at anything particular. and it's almost like your eyes shut off. You're not even seeing what's in front of you anymore. I like to use this prop as an example, but it's like right now, it's like first I'm watching TV, next thing I know, I cannot see the TV. It is gone. All I can see is what's inside of my head. Um, and what's inside of my head was ruminations. And so very quickly, I don't know, maybe, a few 30 seconds to a minute deep into rumination, I was like, oh, you've been spacing out, looking at nothing and ruminating about a particular thing that what if I would have done this thing differently? Maybe there would have been a better result. So that's what my rumination was about, a very specific thing. Um, and I was like, halt, hold on, hold on. And we're going to talk about what to do and how to manage ruminations once you figure out that you're having ruminations. So we will definitely be going into that, but it is totally valid that it is not something we typically plan to do. Certainly, some rumination is not automatic or involuntary. Sometimes we're like, oh no, what if this happens? I better figure it out right now. And so maybe you purposefully are trying to figure it out and think about it and process the information, and maybe part of your rumination includes other compulsions like seeking reassurance from others, hey, what do you think about this thing? I've been really thinking about it and I'm concerned and I would like to know, what do you think is going to happen, or do you think this is true, or and so a lot of times rumination turns into or gets piled onto other compulsions as well, which of course all compulsions are equal. They all feed OCD and make OCD louder. Um, there's also some conversation around, people will say, oh, well, I have like pure OCD, just nothing but ruminating. Everything happens in my head. All my compulsions are in my head. And there are people, obviously a lot of us who have a lot of obsessions and rumination going on in your head. But I would say that I've never come across somebody who's not also doing another type of compulsion that's not mental. And I'll give you an example. As soon as you Google, you're doing a physical compulsion. As soon as you seek reassurance from somebody, you're verbalizing, you're using your words, you're doing a physical compulsion. So I have never met anyone who just thinks through everything all the time, mental compulsions, and never says anything about it out loud or does anything else about it. Um, yeah, just kind of wanted to throw that out there since it's adjacent to rumination. It's sort of tied in with that. Um, so certainly it can be something you're doing that you're aware of, and it can also be automatic or involuntary, like I described what happened to me the other day. So also, rumination often tricks us and presents itself as problem solving. Even I get tricked sometimes. Every once in a while, I'm like, well, what is the best solution to this? And maybe it even starts as an authentic problem solving question. I'm not sure, but next thing I know, I'm like down the road of rumination, going, yeah, I don't know, maybe I should make this choice because my past choice turned out like this, and then there's this, and then what if that, and so it's very easy to get fooled by OCD into thinking you're actually problem solving. Now, one of the important things to note is, I get a lot of questions about how will I know the difference between rumination and problem solving, because they appear sort of in the same package. Like I'm figuring something out. Well, problem solving doesn't tend to feel as urgent or as uncomfortable, or anxiety producing as rumination. Rumination feels like I need to figure this out. This feels like you're getting sucked into having to figure something out versus problem solving. So, problem solving could be, very obvious. Like I problem solve in OCD all the time, right? Like, oh, you know, maybe one of my members is like, hey, I started a new job and I need to change the time of our sessions. And I'm like, oh, huh, I don't have a ton of room on my schedule, but I'm going to figure out a time that works for both of us. Let's talk through it until I figure out something that works for both of us. That's solving a problem, right? That doesn't feel urgent. It doesn't feel like it's going to change my life or the other person's life if we don't solve this urgently. It's something we can work on together. It's something I can address, right? Problem solving is like, oh, my rent is too high. So I think I'm going to find a place to rent that is more in my budget. That's that could feel urgent, but that's a real situation. Those are all facts on the table, right? Like if you can't afford your rent, you're going to have to find somewhere that costs less. And that's a different type of an urgency. That's like, hey, I only have enough money to pay for this for one more month. So I have a month to find a new place. Like that's a different kind of an urgency. The kind of urgency that is felt with rumination is this: you have to solve it right now and you need to have 100% certainty. So we see this come across all of the OCD themes. It doesn't matter what you have. You can have, let's just say it's pedophilic OCD. I need to know for sure whether the things I'm doing, thinking, feeling, um, seeing is this pedophilia or is this OCD? Like that is something I see a lot. And you'll see that, like I said, across themes. Are these harm thoughts that I have about things I'm going to do to potentially harm people, is this real or is this OCD? Because if this, I have to find out because maybe my family's not safe. And that feels really urgent. Like this is a matter of life or death for my family. If I'm a real harm to my family, we need to solve this right now so that I can protect them by removing myself or having them go somewhere or I don't know, locking up all the knives or whatever it is that your OCD is going after. Um, and so it feels way more urgent. Um, and it feels hard to break away from, right? So if I was searching, say, for an apartment, I could take a break from that and be like, wow, I'm going to go eat lunch. I'm going to come back to this. OCD never lets you feel like you get a break and that you'll come back to it later. It's like, solve it, solve it, solve it. So maybe you're trying to sleep and you can't sleep because it is just like spinning around ruminations in your head about things. Um, so that is one of the really big differences in terms of is this a rumination compulsion or am I problem solving? And I always like to tell people that if you're trying to problem solve for something that doesn't have 100% certain answer, you're not problem solving, you're ruminating. So something like, what if I do this and a bad outcome happens? Well, guess what? You can't solve for the future. You're just going to have to go do that thing and see what happens, right? Um, so we can't solve for the past and we can't solve for the future. Did this thing happen? You can ruminate over and over and over, like for instance, with real event OCD. A lot of times people are like, oh, I have to figure out whether this happened or not, or why I did that thing, or did I have bad intentions, or did I get consent, or um, did I touch somebody without knowing it, or did I have a certain feeling in my heart at the moment that I did this thing? And the answer is if you, unless your brain was hooked up to a brain monitor and there were video cameras on you from every angle and it's been following you around for your whole life, you're not going to get that 100% certainty about what happened in the past. And so you might as well just leave it alone. Or if something did happen, again, you're going to have to just leave it alone. You trying to figure it out and figure out why and figure out how and figure out all of these things. That's actually how a lot of false memory OCD gets created when it comes to real event OCD, as well as other things. The more you ruminate about something, your brain wants to start filling in the blanks. And when our brain starts filling in the blanks and we have OCD, it's always a worst case scenario. Never is it like, don't worry, you're a good person. You definitely didn't do anything bad. Nobody ever with OCD has received that message, because otherwise we would love this disorder if it was encouraging and helped us feel better. So, um, let's start talking about what do we do about rumination, because I think that's probably what 99% of people want to know is, how do I just stop it and never do it again? And the answer is, you can't stop and never do something ever again. We have OCD, just like I explained. I don't compulse on purpose these days, 99.9% of the time, but I still fall into rumination. Um, at NOCD, we use ERP, or exposure response prevention therapy, which is how we treat OCD. It is indeed the gold standard treatment for OCD and has been for over 60 years. There is no other therapy that addresses ERP in as effective of a way than ERP. Sometimes people can benefit from being on the correct medications and receiving ERP. But that being said, research shows that even if you're on the right medications, you're still going to need to learn how to manage when your OCD comes up. Um, and for some people, maybe you get a little break, and maybe you don't have a bunch of obsessions bothering you for a few days or a couple weeks. And then there's other people like me where you don't get an hour off. I never have time where my brain is free of OCD, like obsessions or something in the background, constantly. I call it my background noise. And the important thing that ERP teaches us, and that I use in my own life to stay well, is making it your background noise instead of your theme song. Okay. So, talking about how ERP can help you manage rumination. For starters, we typically are ruminating because we have an obsessional fear. You're trying to solve something that is scary to you or concerning to you. Because if it wasn't, you wouldn't need to ruminate about it, right? You're like, oh, you have a winning lottery ticket. Oh, let me think about that, in terrible ways. Like, that probably isn't going to happen. Um, so ERP helps us face our fears gradually and slowly in safe and effective ways. Obviously, we're not asking people to do things that are dangerous or illegal or ridiculous. We're not asking people to do those things. I think sometimes that is a fear people have, like, oh no, what I have harm OCDs, are they going to make me go out and, pretend to kill people? Like, no, of course not. That's ridiculous. We're not going to make anyone lick toilets for contamination OCD. Like, that's ridiculous. We help you face your fears in ways that are helpful, and we start really small and we work our way up. Um, and one of the most important things is that we separate out. So the E of ERP is exposure. So exposing ourselves to thoughts that we are afraid of, or situations that we might be afraid of, things of that nature. Um, but the RP is actually response prevention, sometimes called ritual prevention. At the end of the day, we're talking about not compulsing. And rumination is obviously a compulsion. So ERP teaches us that we could sit with the discomfort of our obsessions, whether our obsessions are thoughts, whether we're experiencing them as images or urges in our body or feelings in our body. Sometimes they're sensory experiences. Um, we can experience those, and we need to learn how to respond differently. So typically, people with OCD respond with a compulsion, whether it's a mental or physical compulsion. But rumination is probably the most common way that all people, like with OCD, end up compulsing. I don't know anyone with any theme of OCD that doesn't ruminate. Because that's just thinking about it, which is typically what then drives you to do a physical compulsion if that's what you're doing, or do even more mental compulsions like mental checking, mentally reviewing, things of that nature. And so the response prevention is the most important part, which is learning how not to compulse or learning how to respond differently to those OCD triggers that are so disturbing. Um, and so we teach a variety of strategies that help you to not engage in your OCD cycle. The reason why people do end up compulsing, such as rumination, is because we want the anxiety to go away. We want the fear to go away. We don't like to be uncomfortable. We're taught as people to not be uncomfortable and to go do whatever it takes to become comfortable. So, because it feels urgent and scary and like we have to solve it, we tend to start to do that because we're just trying to feel better. Sometimes rumination helps people feel better for a few minutes, sometimes it makes you feel worse, but in the long run, you are feeding OCD and making the intensity worse. It's louder. You have to starve OCD of all compulsions in order to start to turn down the volume of your OCD and make it less distressing over time. ERP teaches your brain, don't freak out when this thing comes up. It's not that serious. So I can tell you, I have at any given time, usually like 5 themes of OCD. OCD is just OCD. It's all in the same spot in your brain. The theme just explains how the content is showing up for you. We don't treat different types of OCD, I mean, themes of OCD differently. They're all treated with ERP. So that's just something really important to note. So we treat non-engage, we treat you to not engage in rumination. So that's through things called non-engagement responses. And we also teach something called response prevention messages. And these are things that are really important that I just I can't tell you enough how these really make so much of a difference in people that we treat when they start learning there's a different way to respond and it won't feed your OCD, it won't make it louder, it won't make it worse. But it takes time, right? You've been responding with rumination for a long time. So it takes practice and patience and kindness. I can't say enough about self kindness. People with OCD have disturbing thoughts, and we tend to blame ourselves for those thoughts and say, these are my thoughts. I made these up. I'm a bad person. I should feel shame. And I will drive home for my entire life, as long as I am here on this earth, assuming we're on earth, that we deserve compassion from other people and for ourselves, and kindness, the same kindness that you would give to anybody suffering from a mental health disorder. We do not come up with these thoughts. We do not come up with these images. They happen to us and they go against our values. And that is so, so important. Okay. Um, so non-engagement responses include being able to identify that something has come up that feels disturbing. Yes, that feels disturbing. I acknowledge that it feels anxious or scary, but I don't have to respond to it. And also important is that we don't label it as bad or scary. So rumination and intrusive thoughts come up and they seem real and they make us feel uncomfortable. And because we feel uncomfortable, we want to escape that discomfort. But what if that discomfort is just part of OCD, which it is? It's just part of OCD. It's part of the OCD cycle. When we get triggered by OCD, we have a chemical response that happens in our brain and our body, and it makes us feel like it's serious, it's real, and we have to react. So one of the biggest hurdles that you can go through as somebody with OCD is to realize that when these things come up, that we need to not label them like, oh, that thought was bad, that rumination, what did that mean? What does it mean that I was thinking these thoughts or seeing these things? we have to just label them as nothing. It's like a big nothing burger, right? It's just something over there. It's like some background noise that's happening. I don't have to figure it out. I don't have to ruminate about this. I don't have to solve this. As a matter of fact, I probably can't solve this. I appreciate that it can feel uncomfortable. I acknowledge that it feels uncomfortable, but I also acknowledge that I don't have to do anything about this. Also, using response prevention messages, those are something that helps us address the discomfort without compulsing and helping us sort of stay with that um, sort of with that process of non-engagement and with the uncertainty. So statements like, I don't have to figure this out right now, or I'll figure that out if and when it happens. Things of that nature. Um, and, or something like, I may never know the answer to that and I can live with the discomfort. And maybe you feel like you can't live without the answer, but you have to because there's not going to be a way for you to solve for the past or the future or whatever it is you've been ruminating about. Um, so, what life can look like once you get to the other side of that and when rumination is managed. Um, it looks like this. So, that's kind of the life that I've been living for a long time, which is um, you catch yourself as early as possible. Number one, you catch yourself as early as possible into your rumination. So, I told you I was spacing out and I caught myself once I spaced out and was ruminating a little bit. And I was like, oh, okay. Now that I realize I fell into rumination, I always recommend to people, if you can, get up and move yourself. Because if you're staring off into space, which is where rumination exists when you're spaced out, and then you realize it, but then you don't do something else with that intense focus, you tend to just space out again. So people will be like, I was trying to watch a movie, but like I just kept ruminating. So I'm like, okay, well, that's fine, but that just means you weren't actually watching the movie. Because again, right, the movie's on, you're in your head with rumination. So you're really not looking at the movie. You've got the rumination wall up. It's like buying a ticket to the rumination station. That's what I like to say, which fuels up the anxiety and all of the yucky feelings that OCD makes us have. So I get up, I make myself focus on something else. Maybe if you're watching a movie, I went to the movies the other day, I saw a movie, and I noticed I was spacing out a little bit and ruminating. Soon as I noticed, I started, nope, you're going to start naming things that you're looking at. Yep, I'm looking at the movie, and that person has a cape on, and that cape has a large S on it. And also, there are clouds going by as this person is flying through the sky. So I'm forcing my attention and focus to be on what's happening in this moment that is a values based activity, which was going to the movies with my family and being present. Same happens when we drive. Sometimes you're driving and you're like, oh my gosh, how have I been driving? My eyes like checked out and I didn't even know where I was. And again, you're kind of behind that veil of rumination in your brain. And so when that happens, I check back in as soon as possible, like, oh, wow, I was just spacing out while driving. Okay, I was ruminating. I start naming things like mailbox, it's red, it has a bird painted on it. Oh, look at that, yellow flowers. I might start naming addresses in my head or out loud. Um, Looking at people's cars, makes and models and colors and their license plates and things like that. So you cannot ruminate at the same time as your focus being completely into something else. You might have a tiny bit of background noise, but it's not going to be true deep rumination without spacing out and allowing that to happen. So when it's well managed, it looks like, yep, it pops up and I go, "Psh, nope, that's not happening." And I get up and I do something else, or I start doing that sort of mindful present moment focus activity. And I also don't feel as triggered as I used to feel because I don't feed into OCD's with OCD triggers with compulsions anymore. And they're not as distressing. So I never believe what it's saying. I never think it's real. I have harm OCD, suicidal OCD, homicidal OCD, contamination OCD, just right, order and symmetry. I mean, so many things going on. And they all pop up same time, different times, it doesn't matter. I'm staying focused on what I care about, my values, which whatever it is, I'm doing a therapy session, and in the background it might be like, yeah, and you're gonna whatever, and you're gonna say something inappropriate, or sometimes it's like you don't even have OCD. I'm like, oh yeah, cool. Wow. you know, that's fine. And it just doesn't feel distressing like it used to feel. So that's what life looks like when your rumination is managed alongside your other OCD symptoms. So I do want to move on to the audience Q&A. And I do also want to say that if you have questions, make sure that you are asking them in the Q&A section as opposed to the chat, because I am only reading from the Q&A, which is at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and says Q&A. So there you go. All right. So to start with, what does processing and healing look like for us? So if we are struggling to understand past broken relationships, it won't leave our minds. How do we deal with this, learn, and heal without OCD entering the picture? So that's a great question. Number one, OCD, um, you know, we can't stop OCD from entering the picture. So that's probably the most important thing that I need to say. It's what do we do when it enters the picture? So, in other words, like looking at past broken relationships, they might circle around your mind, but you can't with 100% certainty solve how to never let that happen again, or exactly why things happen. There's not an exact way. So the best thing you can do is say, you know what, whatever's happened happened. All I can do is deal with right now and focusing on moving forward. So that is the answer to that. I know it sounds easier said than done, but it's something that can be done with practice. um, and we have a lot. I saw some people asking about, where can they find sort of some ideas about non-engagement responses and response prevention messages and ERP. And we have a lot of resources on our socials, and at NOCD.com. We have a lot of blogs. We have our free downloadable app with our community where a lot of things go on. I personally advocate for OCD all the time on my Instagram at Taboo Tracie. I like to talk a lot about the taboo themes because those are really important to me, because I think those are some of the most misunderstood parts of OCD. So lots of examples on there as well. Next question, is catastrophizing part of rumination? It can be. It certainly can be. Catastrophizing is worst case scenario, basically. OCD loves to live in worst case scenario. And this is, again, future forecasting, right? Or making what happened is the worst thing ever, or what might happen that's the worst thing ever. And I always say, let's deal with it if and when it happens, if it's about the future. I love this saying. I don't know who made it up, but I love it, which is yesterday is history, tomorrow is a mystery. Which is true. So we're not going to solve for it. Can I talk about intrusive rumination? Well, I would say that I kind of covered that. So all rumination tends to be intrusive because it's about our intrusive thoughts, or images or urges or feelings. Why did I feel that? Why did I get a groinal response? Now I'm going to like ruminate about why that happened when, I don't know, my cat walked by or something along those. So all all OCD and compulsions tend to come in as intrusive. So we don't sign up for it. We don't know what's going to happen. It just happens most of the time. All right. So we have somebody asking a question about dealing with a family member who had a psychotic break, and this triggered their own OCD to flare up with worst case scenarios. What if this happens to me? What if I lose control and become a danger? Um, I need to know for sure this isn't going to happen. This is a perfect example of that future forecasting and of those what if questions that I was talking about. OCD makes us focus in on such few possibilities that it's actually ridiculous if you think about it. Like, okay, what if that happens to you? But what about other things? What if a meteor falls out of the sky on your house? Oh, well, OCD didn't care about that, so it's just not making you worry about that what if. You know, what if you die before anything like that could ever happen? That's possible. What if that doesn't happen? Funny that OCD doesn't ever ask you, what if that doesn't happen, right? Because that would be fine. So we can't control those things. All we can do is live present in this moment and use that question. I have my own NOCD members write this down if rumination is a big struggle for them, and stick it somewhere on a wall, a sticky note, make it your wallpaper on your phone, your computer. And it is, I will deal with that if and when it happens. That is a really, really big one. The other one that I really, really, I just love, I use this for myself, so I like to share it with other people, which is to ask yourself this question, which will let you know if you're ruminating or not, and if you need to stop. So, this is the question and the response. Is this happening right now in this exact moment? If not, move on and do a values based activity instead. So all of those questions that you asked in those ruminations are all what ifs about the future. It's not happening right now. You'll deal with it if and when it happens. And guess what? Do something else with your time. Because what if you spend your whole life worrying about something that could happen that never happens? You've wasted all of your time when you could have been having an enjoyable life. So that is what I have to say about that. Isn't the spacing out while you start thinking also dissociating? No, not necessarily. I always go nuts about TikTok, so I'm just gonna go. I don't even look at it, honestly, at this point in my life. But a lot of people got real upset because a lot of posts went around about depersonalization and derealization and dissociation. And sure, some of those things can happen. But spacing out, sure, it could be considered that, but not in the way that most people are thinking, not in a way that it's like, oh no, I'm going to lose control and like murder people because I'm dissociating. And now I'm like a puppet that's going on in the world with no control. That's really not what we're talking about. Um, it's just like daydreaming, only it's like day nightmaring when you ruminate. So usually when you're daydreaming, it's like, oh yeah, and I met like a famous person and we went out to lunch and like we became besties. It instead it's this daydreaming that sucks. So that's how I like to explain rumination or spacing out. All right. How do you recommend approaching relationship decisions? For example, would I like to stay in my relationship without ruminating? Well, for starters, if you have something like relationship OCD, you could ruminate about that for the rest of your life. But when it comes to relationship decisions or any other decisions in your life, always lead with values. Okay, that's what I would say is lead with your values. Is this person meeting my needs? Am I particularly not doing well? Obviously there's obvious red flags in relationships sometimes. Somebody's not treating you well versus what if they're not treating me well enough? What if there's somebody better out there? What if this isn't the best situation for me? I'm not sure if I should stay or not. There's real problems in relationships, and then there's uncertainty. Every relationship is uncertain. I always tell people that. Listen, people with relationship OCD hate to hear this, but it's a fact. There will always be somebody that works out better for you out there. It's true. There's just too many billions of people out there for that not to be true. So if you're just trying to look for the best one, all this kind of stuff, is this going to last forever? These are just ruminations you cannot solve. So I just ask today, how you doing today? Is, are you miserable? If you're miserable in your relationship, you probably shouldn't have to think about it that hard, that you should probably go somewhere else. Um, versus everything seems pretty good, but you question things constantly, right? Then there's just really obvious things like, oh, somebody cheated on me. Oh, well, that's a real problem. So, all right. Um, and yeah, it can break up relationships. Absolutely, absolutely. I see a lot of relationships break up because people have that relationship OCD, rumination, and uncertainty to the point that they're, confessing to their partner all these intrusive thoughts, and their partner's like, wow, I don't really want to hear that constantly, or constantly seeking reassurance. Um, we don't get reassurance in relationships. We don't know how long our relationship will last. I have relationship OCD, and the way I deal with it actually very successfully is go, guess what? I don't know if it's going to last. I've been in a relationship for over 20 years. That's not a guarantee. Length isn't a guarantee. I don't know what tomorrow brings. I just know what's on my plate today. And if day over day I'm just like miserable and not feeling happy in my relationship, not because of OCD, but because of other reasons, then I know that I need to move on. And so, yeah. All righty. And at NOCD, a lot of times what we'll do is we'll ask you if you're comfortable having your partner come in so we can talk to them about how not to feed your OCD and how to answer you with questions, answer your certainty questions and ruminations with, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. How am I supposed to know if it lasts forever? Obviously, that's our intent, but it doesn't mean that it's possible that we know the answer to that. I'm always like, what if I die today? Okay, well, then I guess I don't need to worry about tomorrow. I'm going to make this minute the best minute that I can have. Maybe this is my last minute. So I'm just going to focus on what's happening right now, not what already happened and not what might happen. Um, all right, great question. Is ERP about embracing the fear as real or simply tolerating doubt? Great question. So it is not about embracing the fear as real, because 99.9% of the time, right, it's completely ridiculous stuff, maybe even 100% of the time. But no, what we do is we embrace that we can tolerate doubt without trying to solve it. So um a great example would be like with my suicidal OCD. Every single day, my brain in the background, it's just random ways. Oh, maybe you're going to die. Maybe you're going to do this. You're definitely going to do this. Oh, you're going to jump off this. Oh, you're going to do whatever. Um I don't have to embrace that, like, that is definitely going to happen. I'm definitely going to end my life, because that's may or may not be true. It's certainly possible. It's not that it's impossible. It's just not in my values today. So tolerating the doubt and uncertainty and discomfort that OCD is bringing is what ERP is all about. So, my answers would be, sure, anything's possible, but I don't have to figure it out right now, right? So yeah, it's about tolerating doubt and tolerating and really embracing that OCD sucks and is never going to give you that certainty that you want. Because even if you were given 100% certainty, OCD would be there to take it from you. Okay. How do you not freak out or think it's not that serious when you have health anxiety? So, example, being terrified of having liver disease, and maybe your nails look similar to somebody who has liver disease. So, OCD wants to run with it, or having a physical symptom. And is it health related, right? It feels serious. All of OCD feels serious, whether it's about health, whether it's about maybe I'm going to die, maybe I'm going to kill somebody. That one comes to me often. Um, maybe I'm going to have cancer. I get that one a lot because a lot of people in my family died of various types of cancer. And so what we have to do about that, instead of, oh no, every little thing that happens, is you follow what your doctor tells you to do. So I go in for my annual wellness checks. And if at my annual wellness check, they do all the things, labs, all that, if they say I'm fine, then I'm good. Unless something really, obvious comes up. I don't know if you're like pooping blood, or, I'm like vomiting every day, and, something really out of the norm, then I'm going to go back to the doctor and say I'm having these new symptoms. But trying to find this importance in every little thing, that's a problem. I used to be very focused on my heartbeat. Oh, does it mean I'm having a heart attack? Does it mean this? Oh, does my arm hurt? Oh, what does it mean? If I have a heart attack, then I'm going to fall on the floor and hopefully somebody's around and they'll call 911. I'll deal with that if and when it happens. Everything isn't important. OCD makes everything feel important, right? But only to you. So I can look at your thing and go, it's not that serious. And you might look at my thing and say it's not that serious, but all OCD feels serious to the person who is experiencing it. Next question. Is rumination connected to problems in decision making? Yes, absolutely, it can be. Sometimes it's called analysis paralysis. Sometimes it's called chronic indecision. Can come up in anything. What where you should go eat for dinner. It could come up in like the smallest ways all the way to the most important ways. Where am I going to go to school? Where am I going to work? Where am I going to live? How will I raise my children? It can be big, it can be small. But yeah, absolutely. Am I making the best decision, the right decision? I actually had a session this morning with somebody where they were like, tell me the best answer to this situation. And it was about selling their house. Like, should I sell my house now, or should I wait 2 months and see if interest rates change or prices go up? And I was like, listen, there are only decisions and choices. There's not best choices and best decisions and the right one with 100% certainty. Okay. So that is the situation with that. There's just decisions. You'll see what happens later. I don't know. And of course, how did I answer that question? I don't know. What do I look like? I have some sort of future crystal ball and I can tell you what's going to happen. No, you make your own decisions. All right. When I see my family members space out or ruminating, what advice do you have for how to help them stop ruminating? They say they're not ruminating and they're only thinking, but they're spacing out for quite a while. Yeah, that's funny you say that because I live with people who have OCD too, and sometimes I'll be like, "What you thinking about?" you know, people don't like to get called out, but sure, maybe they're spacing out, not ruminating. Um, but sometimes it can just help to get them involved into an activity. Like, hey, get involved in a conversation so their focus is now on you. But I feel like that's right on par with it's like telling somebody they're being grumpy because of PMS. Never goes over well. um, all right. What's the difference between OCD, rumination, and anxiety? Don't know if my anxiety is rumination or OCD. So OCD is very specifically the disorder where we have obsessions, obsessional fears, and doubts with compulsions that follow it, such as rumination. So anxiety versus rumination. Anxiety is a feeling. Rumination is overthinking. So that overthinking can increase anxiety. But they are very different. One is a feeling and one is an action that is happening. Let's see, I already answered about dissociation and rumination. How do you get diagnosed with OCD? Absolutely, I can answer that question. Go to a specialist, because I will tell you right now, as somebody who got the wrong diagnosis by probably 100 different types of different people and practitioners who didn't specialize in OCD. they took my suicidal OCD and my homicidal OCD and thought that I was suicidal and homicidal, and I got locked up in hospitals. So at NOCD, we train all of our staff extensively to know the difference and to do proper evidence-based assessments to help people know whether they have OCD or not. We actually do that right at your very first session with us. We spend time very, very carefully. Our first session, sometimes two sessions, making sure that we look at all the things going on with you and making sure to give you a correct diagnosis. Nothing is worse than the wrong diagnosis with the wrong treatment. How long did your journey of OCD treatment take? That is a great question. I wish that I would have like timelined it, but I was kind of actively going through it. So I don't know, to be honest with you. And everybody's journey looks different. So never assume your journey is going to look exactly like somebody else's journey. I have had people who just in a few short weeks go from 0 to 100 and they're like, what? Like, you're better? Like, that's so fast. Amazing. You did really good ERP and you're doing great. And other people who take a little bit longer because they're still hanging on to, but what if this is real? What if these intrusions are real and it means something and I have to keep ruminating or figuring it out? Um, I would say my journey took a minute. It took a little bit of time because I thought I could hang on to certain compulsions or safety behaviors that I thought were reasonable, mostly around contamination and magical thinking. I thought if I didn't do certain magical rituals, my kids would die, or I would be alone. And I thought if I wasn't doing certain decontamination rituals, again, I was responsible for getting other people sick or myself or getting gross things on us. So takes different amounts of time. But once I really just got on board with, you know what, I'm going to do my exposures. I'm not going to compulse. The vast majority of the time, it was like moved from there and it has been smooth sailing since. In suicidal OCD, do you have suicidal thoughts, but you don't really want to die? Yes, that's exactly right. Those thoughts go against what you actually want. Like, I don't want to die, even though I think about having suicidal gestures all day long. I'm not coming up with it. OCD is coming up with it. It's just like, you're going to go hang from a tree. You're going to jump out the window. You're going to stab yourself in the throat. You're going to do that. It's like, oh my gosh, like, yes, I heard you. I see you. Whatever, bro. I don't have time for that because that's not what I want to do today. That's very different than a suicidal crisis. You're crying. You're like, this is what I want. I don't want to be here anymore. That's when it's time to call 988, go to your emergency room, get yourself evaluated. But when you're trying to figure out if it's real, that sounds a whole lot like OCD. So it's all about your values. Like, I don't want to die. I've had suicidal OCD since I was 10 years old. I've been listening to that for a long time. I just don't give it any importance. Okay. Um, Thank you so much for today. I was in a cycle of seeking reassurance. Uh, Work triggers it. Do I think medication's okay? Avoid all reassurance people, psychic readings. Oh, absolutely. So medication, I am not a medication provider. It's out of my scope of practice, but you can go to the International OCD Foundation website, iocdf.org, or you can just type in your little Google search IOCDF and meds, and a list of OCD medications will come up there with appropriate doses. That being said, medication works for some people, it doesn't work for everyone. And there's no other way to know, I guess, unless you try. It doesn't work for me. I have to use just ERP to stay on top of my wellness, and that works for me. And I've also seen medication and ERP combos work excellent for other people. Okay. And yes, please stop with all the reassurance people. Psychic readings. I assure you, if you went to 10 psychic readings the same day, you would have 10 different readings. So they don't know the future. You don't know the future. Trying to get other people to give you certainty about the future is a waste of money. So feel free to put that money into something more values-based. Like, get yourself like a delightful latte, or I don't know, some fun chapstick. Do something else with your money. Can't solve for the future. How do you handle the unknowns of the future in a relationship with OCD? I think I kind of talked about that. That's just a given. No relationship comes with a guarantee, period, the end. It never will. It's never going to. No relationships are a guarantee. We don't know how long both people are going to live. We don't know if somebody's going to cheat. We don't know if, I don't know, you meet somebody else along the way that suits you better. Like so many things can happen. That's one of the uncertainties of life. Most things in life are uncertain, whether we accept it or not, and relationships are one of them. So how I manage through my relationship OCD is accepting that fact that I don't know what's going to happen in the future. I just know what's happening today. I'll deal with the future if and when that happens. What would an ERP be for intrusive thoughts or magical and catastrophic thinking? That would be very specific to something that your therapist would be, your ERP therapist would be able to give you, because it's very specific to how your fears are coming up or how your intrusions are coming up. So um, I can give you an example. Like for me, my magical thinking and catastrophic thinking. So I have magical ritual around a certain time of on the clock, and if I don't stare at it from this time to that time, people are going to die. Guess what? My exposure for that was I have to look away actually before it turns to the next time that saves my family, and sit with the fact that maybe my family's going to die because I didn't complete that magical ritual. Same with catastrophic thinking. Guess what? I'm not a future forecaster. I don't know anything about the future. So I'm not going to make worst case scenario catastrophic thinking. That's very much what OCD does. Oh, it's all going to fail. It's all going to not work out. I don't know. I'll figure that out if and when it happens. All right. Oh, thank you, Johnny UK. Very nice compliment there. Um, all right. I'm autistic. I have a very hard time understanding where rumination ends and perseveration begins, or whether there's any need to really differentiate in terms of how to address the distress they cause. Great question. Dealing with the distress, I think you can do the same across both of those. And at NOCD, we do actually work with people who have autism. We have a support group for people with OCD and autism also to get some ideas about that. But yeah, the distress that it causes, it's really learning how to tolerate the distress and how not to continue to create more distress through rumination or perseverating. Perseveration and rumination are pretty much best friends. They're very similar. Okay, so yep, some more questions about the health OCD, which we answered. Um, let's see, what else have we got here? My son says he has to, needs to, must do his ruminations and compulsions in order to move forward because they feel so real. How do I get him to change this thought process? That's really hard. I have two kids. They're adults. They have OCD. I was just talking to one of them last night, actually. Um, and it's not something that we can force somebody to do. It's really getting somebody through the process of exposure response prevention therapy that helps them learn over time that as they are not solving for, that things still work out okay. OCD feels like a need to, must do. It feels like you have to, like your life depends on it, your outcomes depend on it, but they really, really don't. Um, so yeah, that's something you learn in ERP. I could tell my kids over and over that it's ridiculous. It doesn't mean that they're going to change that. It's one of those things that treatment and a therapist can help people get through. What you can do is not give reassurance and not make it worse, not allow the time and energy to be spent on supporting that compulsion of rumination. Okay, looks like we might have time for one or two more. I struggle with reassurance, OCD, especially in romantic relationships. How do I fight specific compulsions of reassurance? We fight them all the same. We don't fight. There's no reason to fight. What we do is we just leave it. It's non-engagement. It feels like we have to, but we are not trying to fight with it. We're just leaving it alone. We're just leaving it alone. We're not trying to fight it. We're not trying. So it's like if you're in a tug of war with OCD and you put the rope down, you're done. You're not having that tug of war anymore. We're not fighting it. We're just like, yeah, nice rope, bro. Keep it. So that's that's sort of an analogy that gets thrown out there all the time. Is stop struggling. There's not much you can do with that. All right, so if you are interested in finding out more about NoCD and our services, you can download our app for free, join our community. You can go to all of our socials, look for information there. You can go to nocd.com where you can click a little button and schedule a free 15-minute call with our fabulous NoCD team to learn more. We have a ton of insurances that we take. We have payment plans, all kinds of different things to offer, and you can find out more about that by scheduling yourself a call. So I hope this has been helpful. I hope everybody can get something from this. And I just want to say, never give up. There's always hope. I promise that much. So, all right. Peace out, y'all.